the last few weeks, I've been asked a lot of questions by people, both about what it's like to have been hosting refugees at home for many years, but also about things that people can usefully do and how best to conduct themselves in the middle of a situation where we're witnessing a major humanitarian evacuation across Europe out of the Ukraine. At a time when many people who are of Russian nationality and Russian background who are living in the UK may well be finding themselves to be eligible to make asylum claims. And when there's a lot of uncertainty about how best to act, and it's wonderful to see the number of people interested in hosting, but also interested in supporting the work of hosting refugees and enabling people to build new lives when all has been lost, and also considering how adjustments and changes might need to be made in their own communities. So I thought I would just do a little bit of a talking head that gave a few pointers to people. First of all, some really practical advice that I've found useful and that my friends and colleagues who are working across the refugee and asylum sector have found useful and learned over many years. So first of all, work with really well-established organisations, our city councils, with the Scottish Government, with the Scottish Refugee Council as the umbrella organisation, are really important organisations to work with, and read what they've got on their website. The Scottish Refugee Council website is kept bang up to date. You can find a lot of what you need there. So maybe think twice before you jump online and say, can you tell me X, Y, Z? Could you come and speak to my group? These are organisations under a lot of pressure at the moment to act very quickly. And what's on their websites is there for a really good reason. It's there to actually offer the basic information that everybody needs to know, and make that as available as democratically as possible. So the Homes for Refugee update, also from Scottish Refugee Council, is a really helpful place to start and shows you that there's a wide ecology across Scotland of how refugees are hosted in private homes in some instances, but largely looking to get people into their own accommodation as quickly as possible, because that offers the best opportunity for people to rebuild their lives. So Scottish Refugee Council website is the first thing to go and have a look at. And we'll make sure we've got links to all of this alongside this talking head as well. The organisation that I've hosted with is an organisation called Positive Action in Housing, which runs the oldest and most experienced hosting organisation in the UK, called Rooms for Refugees. It knows all about safeguarding. It knows all about checks on hosts. It's very good at making sure that matching is done in the interests of those who are to be hosted. It's got a long history of stories of people living well with families and communities, but also has an exit plan for everybody to be able to get their lives, their claims, their immigration status back on track. There's a serious board that oversees that work. It's an organisation that's a fully registered charity, and lives from donations and grants within Scotland and across the country. So if you are thinking about hosting yourself, do look at Rooms for Refugees. There are other hosting organisations as well in the country who do similar work, some of them not quite as old as the one hosted by Positive Action, but who work together and who are doing the work of accommodating people temporarily. Hosting people in homes is only one small part of the solution to a well-functioning, well-structured system of accommodation for people in need of humanitarian protection, for people who are seeking asylum, and for people who are refugees. And the aim in Scotland is that there should be integration with full dignity to the human being from day one. That's in the New Scots integration strategy. And from day one means people being in the best accommodation possible for them from day one. And so we're really looking at accommodation in homes, in flats, in houses, as far as possible across the country. It's also worth remembering that the Scottish Government for this scheme has committed to being a super sponsor. That means that all the worries about immigration, about breaches of immigration rules, about what you can and cannot do underneath the rules and regulations of our immigration system are being covered by the Scottish Government here. And this is a really helpful approach that's been taken by the Scottish Government to ensuring that people are protected in their immigration status as people coming from the Ukraine once they are given a visa. So the Super Sponsor Scheme, again, you can see information about it on the Scottish Government website and also on the Scottish Refugee Council website. It's a really important protection for those of us living in Scotland within this devolved competence for thinking about where you might be able to, how you might be protected around questions of immigration. It's worth you thinking a little bit ahead. In my experience of hosting for many years, and I know that other hosts who are also colleagues have had similar experiences, the ability to regularize your immigration status and to have a pathway towards settlement is really important. And it's not easy. So it's really worth you getting information about the immigration system for people who are claiming humanitarian protection. The organisation par excellence that gives information out to those who are seeking asylum, humanitarian protection, are refugees, looking to do family reunion, but also to those in community groups who are supporting them and acting in solidarity with them. The organisation that does this is Right to Remain. Right to Remain has a toolkit. It's over 10 years old now. It's regularly updated. It's available in numerous languages. It's available also as a video. It's available as a booklet. It's available as pull-out sections. It's available as an animation. A lot of care has been taken by the workers in that organisation to really research the best way of communicating with people who need to regularise and maintain a secure immigration system and status within the United Kingdom. So definitely think about looking at that website and watching some of those videos and reading that work. And do that for yourselves. Again, we're talking here about organisations with maybe 1 or 2 members of staff, and there are millions of people across the country asking questions. So I think one of the really important principles at the moment for those keen to help or keen to get involved in this kind of work is to learn for yourself, take time to digest that information for yourself. Go along to webinars or advice sessions, lectures that people might be offering, but don't overburden the organisations with just 1 or 2 members of staff overall who are doing incredible work, but cannot service all of our needs to help. Do look locally at local refugee groups and hosting groups, but also ethnic minority cultural groups and even language support groups. Maybe look locally at your sports centre or a gardening club or the park run. These are all great places for the work of integration and hospitality to be taking place. But established groups that work with refugees in your area are the first place to be able to get advice, look at what they're offering, what kinds of drop-in sessions are they doing, what kinds of advice are they offering. Again, these are all largely volunteers, often with just 1 or 2 paid members of staff. They know their stuff inside out and back to front, but their priority will always be supporting the people in need and not necessarily responding to people wanting to help. So be patient in these situations. It's going to take a little while until visas are issued. We know at the moment this is quite a laborious bureaucratic process. This is completely normal for a visa issuing process within the UK and from the Home Office. So this isn't a surprise to any of the organisations who are working to bring people over to the UK. So do be patient, and do remember that the decision making about visas rests with the Home Office and not with small individual organisations. In the meantime, one of the things you might want to do, and something that we found is really important, it's a key part of the New Scots Refugee Integration Strategy, is yes, being able to teach people, help people, be alongside people, chum people along as they come to live their life primarily in English, but also to do the reverse as well, to learn some words of another language. So with Ukrainian refugees, obviously learning some Ukrainian, or also some Russian, as some of those who come will be speakers of Russian primarily. There are apps now that you can use to do this in your own time, but there are also courses that you can probably find online and join in. But also think about other refugee communities in our midst, those who speak Pashto or Arabic or French or Tigrinya. Maybe have a go at learning some words in those languages. It's amazing the difference it makes if you just say a few words in another language. If you can just say hello and meet and greet. I know some great people who work with United Nations organizations or in hosting organizations who say 10 words. I need 10 words in any language that I can possibly muster. And that will release laughter, and it will endow dignity to others by doing that. You might want to get yourself informed about the Nationality and Borders Bill. This is a serious matter, and it will, we think, soon pass to the stage of royal assent and become law. There are elements in this bill which will criminalise people who seek asylum. There are elements in this bill that could deprive people of citizenship to the third generation if they came over to the UK as immigrants. There are elements in this bill that are proposing to offshore people who claim asylum, to send them to another country and wait until their claim is processed. So very much like those who are stuck waiting in the cold in parts of Poland or northern France, trying to get visas and waiting for visas and having nowhere to go. These are dangerous proposals that the government is making. And many of us in a movement known as Together with Refugees, with an orange heart that you might have seen on social media, have been extremely concerned about what the government is attempting with this bill. In many ways, many of the best legal and policy minds are telling us that the bill can't be implemented, that there will be many, many, many legal challenges. There is the likelihood of a great deal of civil disobedience, such as the protests that we've seen around other elements of immigration law and control, not least in the city of Glasgow in the past and famously last year. So it is worth you understanding what that bill is attempting to do. And there's a very good explainer of it that's in a briefing paper on the website of the Royal Society of Edinburgh. There are also many good explainers from organisations like the Scottish Refugee Council, like the Red Cross in the UK. United Nations High Commission for Refugees in the UK has issued a legal opinion stating that it believes that the bill could be in breach of the Refugee Convention that the United Kingdom was a signatory to in 1951. So there are many concerns and many organisations writing of their concerns. But again, we'll put some of those links up on the website so you can see those. I think revisiting some of the websites on a regular basis, if you're getting involved with this work, checking what's changed is a really good idea. Another thing I'd say, a lot of people have been saying, oh, how can I collect stuff to send to Poland or to Moldova or even to Ukraine or possibly to Germany? How can I send blankets or paracetamol or bandages or things people might need in a humanitarian evacuation? And I would say two things to this. The first one is think really hard before donating stuff. Not least stuff you don't want anymore, but you think this might be a way of sending elsewhere. work with those on the ground, directly dealing with people as they arrive, because those are the people who know what is needed, not us. Our imagination is limited. When you're on the ground, you see what the needs are. And on many occasions in these kinds of citizen-led initiatives, they're really well-meaning, but actually they just lead to an awful lot of stuff being expensively transported and ending up in landfill. That was the case in the Calais camps. Lots of stuff was donated. We spent hours sorting it, and quite a lot of it was just not suitable for people to wear or people to be given. And with Brexit, there are now many forms to fill out to be able to actually export things from the United Kingdom, and it's very expensive. One of the best things you can do, if you are able, is to give money or to raise money, and to do it as far as possible, if you're able and if you're a taxpayer, in a way that is tax efficient, through gift aid, so through organisations that are themselves directly registered for gift aid. And doing this through the disasters in the United Kingdom or the equivalent in Scotland is a really important thing to do. And these are well-practiced organisations at being first responders to disasters. But also to think hard. The amount of money raised for Ukraine is absolutely extraordinary. A little like we saw years ago when the tsunami hit in Southeast Asia. We saw an amazing outpouring of grief and love to people, and that took the form of money. But actually, one of the things that I know that aid organisations and humanitarian organisations are seeing is that money is being taken away from areas, particularly on the African continent, where there are wars that are ongoing, and where there is famine, and where there is disaster caused by climate chaos. At the moment, particularly in Ethiopia, in Tigray, and in some of the Western regions, there is a very severe drought. There was an excellent documentary about this that's now on YouTube, but which was on Channel 4 just last night. These areas also need money. They don't need money taking from Africa to give to an area that's actually relatively well served by aid organisations and by infrastructure on its doorstep. So do try and give to general funds so that aid organisations can target that money in ways that they might feel is best. And an example of that just in Scotland is Skiaf. There are many other organisations across the country working in the UK, but within Scotland, Skiaf is raising money for direct humanitarian aid, yes, for the Ukraine, but also for its neighbouring countries, and vitally for ongoing disasters, the war in Tigray, in South Sudan, in Yemen, and also the terrible floods that recently afflicted Malawi. So do please try and make sure that those regions don't end up in worse situations. And recently I heard a briefing from humanitarian organisations saying it is a huge risk at the moment that the upshot of the invasion and aggression and war on Ukraine by Russia could lead to many more deaths in Africa than in the Ukraine itself, because of the way that aid is taken away from those countries. So there's a further knock-on effect from war. War always has more casualties than those that are in the direct war zone. There are many ripple effects, and it's really worth being aware of that. In Scotland, it's worth you being informed about the Scottish Government COSLA, the umbrella organisation for local authorities, and the Scottish Refugee Council's work with the new Scots Refugee Integration Strategy. I convene the working group, the strategy group, for a range of organisations, and on behalf of those 3 organisations. And there are many amazing holistic integration projects that are happening at the moment, working to understand integrating as a whole society operation, grounded in and rooted in human rights, the right to a home, the right to education, the right to health, the right to speak your mother language, the right to enjoy your culture and cultural rights, the right to seek asylum. And those are respected in the New Scots strategy. And there are many small groups and organisations as part of that at the moment. So do inform yourself about that work. It's been ongoing for over 10 years. Scotland's has one of the oldest integration strategies in the world, and one I think we can be really very proud of, and continue to work, all of us, to enhance that work. And to see integration as something we all have to do. It isn't something that should be loaded up or burdened upon those who have arrived, but should very much be about a whole society approach. There are many other things that people can do helpfully, and many other small groups and organisations that I've not name checked here, that are continuing to do amazing work. Some of it very much in the advocacy and activist sphere, some of it looking to keep the journalism straight and good and true on this topic, and to reduce the xenophobia that we find in the press. Organisations like Migrant Voice, for example. There are others who are running really sustainable and sustaining donation systems. Refugee would be one of them, but also the Red Cross for Scotland doing some beautiful work around family reunion, but also supporting refugee voices in Scotland. The work of Safe in Scotland with their destitution night shelter, providing safe shelter for people, and many, many others, as well as us having a lot of groups that are now led by people who are experts by experience, who've been in this country for 10 or 15 years and who really know what they're about. So finally, I would say, it's important not to burn out in doing this work and in supporting people who have fled from conflict or fled from persecution, and to know what your own limits are. So don't take something on if you think this isn't for you. Not everyone can host, should host, and might be able to host. Not everybody can raise money or should give money. The word of welcome on the streets, saying hello to somebody, that costs nothing. And most people are able to do that. Being part of making your community a welcoming place, a place of sanctuary, is a really important contribution that you can make. And many communities just do that on a day-to-day basis, and see that they can just get alongside people, maybe just momentarily. But it's important to continue to nourish yourself, to step out from the media feeds that are so distressing at times, and to be part of some really beautiful work. There are incredible projects going on which are about gardening spaces or sport or playing football together, or cookery projects, or learning to code, or being part of festivals that celebrate different cultures, not least Refugee Festival Scotland. These are really nourishing spaces for us all, where we can celebrate a holistic community, and places which can be life-giving in and of themselves. So I'd really encourage you, again, look at your local organisations, look at what different communities are doing, and get involved in that work too. And maybe finally, just a little plug for the team I work with here at the University of Glasgow, the people working on scholarship schemes and on hosting within the campus, the many good members of Glasgow Refugee Asylum Migration Network who run seminars, but also the work of the UNESCO RILA team here. We've a range of podcasts that you can listen to get a sense of this work, a spring school coming up, lots of videos and resources online, much of which we try and make as nourishing as possible, and where we really acknowledge the work that is done by diaspora communities, by those who've come themselves as migrants, as asylum seekers, as refugees, and who are always the first ones to be doing this work of hosting themselves. So do maybe check out some of those resources as well. We wish you well with whatever it is you're wanting to do, and we will from time to time be running events ourselves that you might want to register for or come along to. Thanks so much for taking time to listen to some of my tips for advice that have come from people just asking me a few questions over the last little while. Thank you.